Your son did not arrive at his destination. You're responsible for his safety. Why can't you tell me? Where's my boy?
Saoirse, first of all, congratulations on kind of an incredible year, really, because I feel that you can ride the wave of everything that you did, but you have 2 films right now that folks are talking about, Blitz and obviously Outrun, and it's just, I think, a great time for you.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Let's talk about Blitz because I'm an American, so obviously I know a little bit about World War II, but this really dives into those very frantic weeks where it was literally bombs dropping on London. And your character and your young son. When did Steve approach you about this role and how did you get it?
It was a couple of years ago. It was at the top of the year and I was in Australia and I'd been away from home for like 4 months at that stage and was just very ready to get back to my house and my dog. And I was going straight into prep for the Outrun, which, you know, in total was going to be like a 6-month job basically, because we were producing it and we did multiple pre-shoots and things like that. And so I'd said to my agent during that time, because I love a break, so I was like, when the Outrun's done, I'm going away. And the only way I won't go away is if someone like, I don't know, Steve McQueen is gonna make a movie. And then a few days later, he contacted me and he's like, Steve McQueen's making a movie and we're gonna get you in to meet him. And so I met him and had this great chat with him, which was only like 20 minutes. It was really brief, but he explained to me how this was going to be a different take on a story that we all know so well. And I was so kind of intrigued by the central relationship being one between a child and his mother. So so I was in, but I was such a huge fan of his anyway that I probably would have said yes to most things.
Is this the first time you really played a mom continuously on screen this way?
Yes.
What was that like for you? Because, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, I started following you and you were mostly having moms on screen with you.
Yeah.
And so now, as a child actor, to kind of be in that reverse role, what was that like?
You know, it's funny that you say that about knowing all of these other on-screen mothers that I had, because I'm really lucky with the majority of them that I worked with. They were so wonderful with me. And even when I was a kid, I feel like kids just have a sort of a BS radar.
Yeah.
So I think the ones who really tapped into playing my mother and were comfortable with that and were confident around me, I really responded to them. And I always thought, there is a difference between people who are really sort of forcing that type of character and the ones who just naturally seem to be very good at it. And I always thought, okay, whenever I play a mother, because I do feel quite maternal myself anyway, and I have such a special relationship with my own mom, I was like, I want to feel like I'm really representing what that relationship is like, and the honesty of it, and it not feeling forced, but it kind of becomes a part of who you are in a way. So I think I was probably very influenced by those on-screen relationships that I had with like people like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Rachel Weisz, these amazing women who were just so gorgeous with me, so supportive and kind, and you know, and I really wanted that to be what I was able to bring to life when I played my first mother. So
that's so great, and you did it incredibly well. And let me just say too, just for me personally, the fits were amazing. Like the costuming of this thing,
right.
Like it was a very nice fashion moment as well.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to the work already, and it's crazy because you started your career so young, but you've worked with some of the most, I think, incredible filmmakers already, between Greta Gerwig and obviously Steve, but you know, Joe Wright, and it's a bath of riches, really. But I'm curious, as far as Steve, what would you say was a bit of direction or the way he approached being a director that you hadn't seen before with some of these other directors? Like, what's unique to a Steve McQueen filming experience?
I would say that the process is quite unique to him. He's someone who, he has a working draft in terms of the script, but it's so vital that he has those early conversations with the actors who are playing his central characters, because it's those conversations that really build the role and build who that character is. And so I spoke to him very early on about my relationship with my mother, and just my mother, as a woman and the experience that she had in New York and the fact that she was a nanny and like, you know, her experience growing up. And he really did make that a part of who Rita was. So even though I wasn't, you know, producing Blitz in the way that I was in the Outrun, I still really felt like creatively I had a voice and I had a say in who this character was actually going to become. So, and for, you know, for someone who as well would love to direct at some stage, to step into that world kind of 6 or so months before a movie is actually made and see that there is this point where the director is so open to outside influences making the story even richer. I found that really wonderful to see, and him really not needing to have the best idea on set. He always would say the best idea wins, so it doesn't matter who it comes from. Once it makes the project richer, that's the most important thing, and there's such an integrity to that Steve carries with him all the time that I really respected.
You say that you want to direct, which I'm like, girl, you're already so talented. 4 Oscar nominations, barely a millennial. Like, this is not fair. I'm curious, as the filmmaker, what was that when you were a child? When did it sort of switch to where you wanted to be behind the camera? And what's the kind of project you're looking for that would make you say, okay, this is where I want to be on the other side of the lens? Would that be one you starred in? Would it be one where you were completely absent of it?
I wouldn't star in it. There's no way. There's no way. I don't think I'd act in it at all. I think it depends on if you need to get something made, that maybe you'd need to make an appearance in it, but there's no way I could lead something that I was directing. The funny thing about it is I kind of feel like there was a bit of me that was more, I mean, who knows if I'll be any good at it, but there was always a bit of me that was more of a director first before I was an actor, because when I was really young, I always used to have like my little JVC camcorder and I'd make little short films with my friends and I'd write scripts and hand them to all of them. And basically I was like a form of like Brian E. Tallis and Joe March when I was like, you know, 8 or 9. So before I actually started acting, before that became my focus, that was how I sort of expressed myself, was through bringing people together and hopefully bringing something to life. So I've always loved it. And even then when I started to act, you know, there were so many movies that I was doing where I would play characters that were loners. So a lot of the time I wasn't interacting with other actors on screen when I was a kid. And so the crew and the director were my family, and they were the ones that I really interacted with the most. So actually I was always so fascinated with like how the camera worked. I always wanted to, I remember Jodie Foster said this as well, I always wanted to be with the camera department. I always loved working with those creative departments on like building a character. So that's always been an interest of mine from the moment I started.
It's so funny you mentioned Bryony and Joe March. Is it 3 of your Oscar nominations you played writers or somewhat writers? Because I guess Lady Bird, she wants to be a writer. She's not quite a writer yet.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because the
Bryony, Joe, and yeah, you'd count Lady Bird.
And if Brooklyn's a diary, you could make her a writer too.
That's all. No, because then I'm just being typecast. No, she's not a writer.
Okay, but I do want to talk about your Oscar-nominated work because I saw this interview where you were on with Jimmy and you were just like, yeah, all 4 times where I lost. Let's take to the better nights. What was the best night at the Oscars for all 4? Because I know you didn't win on all 4.
No,
but one of them had to be a fun night. I'm sure you got drunk with somebody on one of those nights that was fun or something.
Let me see. I feel like Lady Bird Oscars was really special, and that whole award circuit was, I mean, it's so full on. You know, it's like a presidential campaign. It's like 6 months long, and you're so tired by the end of it, and you've just kind of got nothing left of your soul. But I will say that the thing that kept me going that time, because that was my second time doing it sort of as a young adult, the thing that kept me going was the group of women that I was with. It was Fran McDormand that was winning that year. Margot was a part of that group. I think Meryl was a part of it as well. But it was just Fran set such a beautiful atmosphere of like unity, and even though she was the one that was getting up there, every single speech that woman made was about someone else. It was about either highlighting a young talent or someone who hadn't had their chance on stage yet. Like that was an actor, as far as I'm concerned, that didn't need the awards. It was nice to get up and you know, be recognized, but you can tell that woman is just all about the work. And she really set the tone that year. So that was probably my favourite year, I would say. Brooklyn was incredibly special because it just kind of came out of nowhere. The last time that I went for Little Women, I was at home in bed by like 11 o'clock at night. I didn't go to any of the parties. Fair. I was like, can we just get a ragu and a glass of wine? And then I went to bed, and it was great. So they've all kind of had their own, it's been a very different experience every time, I'd say.
I dig that. And I can see how the Lady Bird won. And then this year, if, you know, the gods are with us, you will be joined with one of your Lady Bird cast members, because Timothy's back on the circuit with 2 movies as well.
I know.
So,
what's the second movie?
Complete Unknown and Dune.
Oh, and Dune as well, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think we know he's got equal shots in anything that he does, but I think Complete Unknown is one that folks are very much anticipating.
I know. It would be so nice to do it with pals. And actually, that's the nice thing about doing it a few times, is that like you've got your mates with you. So like even having Paul Mescal around this time, who's a dear friend of mine, to know that like we're going to be at this stuff together makes a big difference.
You will be with him on that one. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to, I loved Brooklyn because it was one of the few times that I got to hear you in your native accent. And I'm curious, because you've done Sacramento, Californian, you've done British, you've done, I don't know if you've done Australian. Polish. Yeah, you've been everywhere. What is the hardest word that you had to do in a separate accent that kept you in fits? Like, what was the word that you literally was like, if they could just take this out of the script, I would be so happy? Because I do feel you get extra credit for that every time being in a different accent.
Thank you. Maybe I should get an Oscar for that.
If they had a gold medal, I'd give it to you, because you and Margot never speak in your native accents.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad someone appreciates us, honestly. It's about time. The Californian accent, for some reason, has been one of the hardest for me. And Greta used to get on my nerves with it, because she was like, you need to make it flatter. And I'm like, I sound like a robot. Like I felt like there was no melody at all in the way I spoke, but that's the way Californians speak. And I think whenever I've done American, the A sound, so like dad, it's so muscular when I say it. Everything is so muscular when I say it, that I found that really difficult when I was younger. Anything in an RP accent is difficult in like a posh English accent. Oh, okay. But like middle class posh English is tough. I can't think of one particular word, but the A sounds are always difficult for me.
I appreciate that you said the Sacramento. I'm from Alabama, so everything's garbled.
Okay, yeah, but it's hard to just make it super flat, isn't it?
I want to talk a little bit about the Outrun, because it's crazy that you're in this role like Blitz, where you're the most nurturing mama bear, doing everything she can to take care of her family, essentially, not just her son, but all of those around her. And then in the Outrun, you're more like me, where it's like, this is a woman just trying to make it through the day and having to deal with the battles within. What was it like approaching that? Because you did produce it, but it is a difficult subject matter. This is a woman dealing with addiction, and the type of addiction that doesn't usually get a feature film adaptation.
No, it doesn't. I think alcoholism, particularly in women and in young women, is never really something that we speak about. And it's stigmatized across the board, but I think that's what we found quite unique about this story, is that it was going to follow someone who's quite young, who like on paper shouldn't be an alcoholic, shouldn't be an addict. And of course it's so much deeper than that. It's so rooted in mental health, and we wanted to explore that. We had such an incredible book that was our Bible that it was adapted from. And so much of the story is about the healing that comes after that very chaotic, dark time in someone's life, and the sort of non-linear journey of that, how it's very back and forth. It's up, down, left to right. There's no sort of one size fits all when it comes to recovery, and we wanted this portrayal to be as honest as it could be. And I just felt so lucky that I was getting to explore a subject that's very close to my heart. And it's a particular illness that's caused me a lot of pain in my life, and it's really shaped who I am. And I think up until that point, I wasn't ready to want to understand it. I just wanted to be angry at it. I just wanted to lash out at it and be this sort of villain in my life. And I was finally at the point, and it was around COVID time, where Jack, my partner, had read it. And he said, I think this is the next film that we should make and the next character that you should play. And I think he knew that I was ready to explore it finally and get into the headspace of someone who is actually going through that addiction themselves. And from a sort of performance perspective, there is absolutely nothing that is off the table. When you're playing someone, especially when they are under the influence, there is no rule book. You know, you can make it as big or as small as you want to. There's moments where she's really funny. There's moments where she's cruel and she's ugly and nasty. So I got to do everything. And I think with the results, objectively speaking, it's a performance that I've just never given before. So I'm so happy that people have responded to it in the way that they have. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, look, not to make it too serious, I think there's a lot of cultures where this is not as talked about as much, so I appreciate how it was sort of dealt with in that. And then for you, it's sort of like with actors, you have to kind of throw your cap over the wall. It's like, so you felt like you were ready to do this, but then you've got 6 months of prep and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of stepping into the shoes of an addict for a performance?
Well, there was two things that were really difficult. The first thing was not turning those drunken sections into caricatures. I didn't ever want it to feel like it was a joke. And I think that it's very easy for performers to slip into this sort of like over-the-top, slurred speech, cross-eyed version of a drunk person, which just isn't real. So I really wanted to sort of accurately portray that, and I did a lot of work with a movement coach on that, and I really thought about, okay, what is the identity of this scene, because we have so many drunk scenes at the beginning of the piece, and I never wanted to sort of repeat an emotional beat. So that was a really tough challenge. And then I think also, because of what I've said, that it's something that I had gotten into such a habit of being angry at and hurt by, to humanize an addict for me, to humanize an alcoholic, was incredibly difficult, actually. It took a lot for me to have patience with someone with that particular addiction and to find empathy, actually. But I knew that's why I needed to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and you did it fabulously. I hope both. And in the fact that, again, you know, you might pull a Kate Winslet this year with two performances that people are sort of incredibly raving about. Again, it's crazy to think of all the fun movies you've done, Best Picture nominated, Oscar nominated performances. But for you, what's the one that you come across the most in your regular life? Are you like flipping through the channels and see Lady Bird the most and Atonement? Like, I don't know. Because I feel like I see Atonement all the time, but I seek it out. Like, what is the one? Oh, yeah, girl. Because I like a good cry.
Okay, but you seek it out. It's not
I
like
seek it out. But like, I go
TV.
look at the clip at the end where you're like, where they're fighting and she's just like, he sleeps so deeply. I just pull that up to cry. Like literally,
God.
like it's all of it.
I know. What is the one that pops up the most? I mean, Brooklyn is on every holiday season. Everyone watches that on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
So that one pops up a lot. I think Little Women pops up an awful lot, and Lady Bird, I would say. But Brooklyn seems to be one. Brooklyn and Lady Bird are the ones where I think, because it's about leaving home, and it's such a sort of coming of age story, and all the sort of hurt and the heartbreak that goes with that and goes with homesickness, everyone can relate to that. So they're probably the two that come up again and again. And actually, a lot of people still talk about The Lovely Bones.
Facts.
Yes, a lot of young women in particular really relate to that story. So I get a lot of people coming up to me and saying that is one of my favorite films.
Oh, I'm glad that they do that, because if it was me, I would just say, why did you leave Donald Gleason? But that's
I know, a lot of people say that. I agree.
That's a
I'm
podcast
a big Jim fan.
for another day. Thank you so much, Saoirse, for being here.
Thank you.